So Sam, you've been described as someone that takes ideas and you actually turn them into reality, which I think is pretty cool. And so for people that are meeting you for the very first time, what's the journey that led you to become so deeply rooted in entrepreneurship and innovation?
So I never thought I'd be here. It's funny, man. On the day we're recording this, I came from a couple of meetings. That's why I got the tie on. But the president of the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank was in town today. So I was in a couple of meetings that he was in. And he never thought he'd be running a Federal Reserve Bank, which is like, 12 people do it, 10 people do it? I don't know. And I'm sort of similar. To hear that, I'm like, yep, I know what you're talking about, man. Because I did not study business in college. I studied history. I was like, I took macroeconomics. I got a C-. I was like, that's fine. I just got the requirement out of the way. I'm never going to do anything with business. My dad was in healthcare and was a healthcare entrepreneur. I just didn't think I was going to do it. Thought I might teach or work at a nonprofit, do something kind of benevolent. And that was it. And was on that path, graduated college, came back to Nashville, needed a job. I worked in hotel management for 2 years, which in retrospect was awesome. Was where I got my business education. Worked for Marriott Hotels, largest hotel chain in the world. Got leadership training, learned how to read a P&L, hire, fire, sales, customer service, everything. And but then again, wanted to work somewhere where I felt like I was making a difference. Went to a nonprofit, and it was there down the hall, a guy named Steven. We were talking one day about, this is way back in 2006, about how young people who we were working with at this charity, man, they were online. They were on their phones. They were on the internet. They were using these new tools like YouTube and blogging and what would become social media. How could we, as a charity, use those tools to reach more young people to spread the cause? And we were chatting, and the answer was, well, let's build a website. In other words, let's start a business. And once I got that taste of, here's a thing we want that we wish existed, it doesn't exist, let's create it. I knew, I was like, look, this is what I'm gonna do the rest of my life. I not run this single company, but take ideas, do something with them, turn them into reality, maybe help other people do that. So I ended up starting 4 different businesses throughout my time before coming into my current role, running the Entrepreneur Center, which is teaching people to do that same thing.
That's awesome. I want to focus in on the first, one of the first things you said. The history part of it was interesting. I do think that they should teach more history in business class. That way people aren't repeating those mistakes. But the hospitality side, I think there's a lot of value in you starting over in hospitality. What are some of the lessons that you learned from that?
Man, it's funny because again, several people have said something to the effect of, life can only be lived forwards but understood backwards. Or we all like to think like, oh, here's my resume. Look, it all makes sense. But it's like, no, dude, in the middle of it didn't make sense at all. Hotel management for me, it was the only job I was qualified for. So in college, my part-time job was I connected microphones like we're using here at college, because they would have corporate meetings or people get married, chapel services, things like that. And that was my job. So I knew how to do that. And the Marriott Hotel by the airport in Nashville was hiring for an audio visual technician, I think it was. It paid $13 an hour. I was like, dude, I'm gonna be so rich. Because I made almost like half that in college. And that was the job. And so it was thinking, going and connecting microphones, but the way that most hotels, but especially Marriott, was like, you're front lines. You're talking with customers every day. These business customers were paying a lot of money. The meeting business of hotels is very high margin. So it really matters to keep those customers happy. And so understanding that, now that I think is part of, going back further, how I grew up in a family that was very warm and welcoming, whether it was welcoming people into our home to stay with us or at the holidays. Again, lots of families do that, but just that understanding. And a lot of that was probably our faith upbringing. My parents and I grew up very religious, very Christian. And so part of that hospitality, that kindness, that loving kind of nature was also part of it, making other people feel comfortable, feel warm. And so doing that in a corporate setting was something new. I'd stayed at hotels before, of course.
Yeah.
But thinking about it, I remember our director of operations talking about, someone staying at this hotel today, they've maybe saved up for a whole year, a whole decade to stay here. And what experience would we want them to have? And that was part of the Marriott's philosophy. The family who started that was taking care of the employees, will take care of your customers will come back. And several businesses since then have employed something. Southwest for a long time used that. And so just that idea of making people feel welcome and seeing there's an entire business around that is something pretty unique, and it was pretty fun to be a part of.
You know, I don't know why I was thinking about this yesterday, but I was thinking about Pizza Hut.
Okay.
And Pizza Hut I used to love going as a kid, right? You would go, you'd have the red lights above the booth, you'd go and sit in there with the family, the smells of it. And then it feels like sort of corporate America took over Pizza Hut.
Sure.
And now it's this very just watered down, very streamlined marketing where you can't go in there and sit anymore. No. You have you order your pizza for delivery, or you pick it up. And it really made me, I was thinking like, okay, what makes like the local pizza place better than just take the pizza part of it out, right?
Yep.
Because I used to love Pizza, right? But you compare the local place to like Pizza, like what's the difference? And it's like that place to go and hang out with your family. And that's what's really interesting about, you were talking about the Marriott. And I feel like that's what we've lost in businesses, many businesses. You've lost that part of it where it's like the human part of it. They've just kind of stripped down, let's cut down all our costs, let's increase all of our profits. And here's what you ordered, right? And it removes all that human element of it.
Man, okay, dude, we're jumping into it. I love it. I love this. Okay, so yes, you're completely right. Because what do we want? All of us we want to belong somewhere. So part of my other through line through my life, again, looking back, is this phrase: the height of my success is directly related to the depth of my community. So the height of my success directly related to the depth of my community. I didn't realize that to the kind of in the midst of COVID, my business that I was running at the time, my fourth company, was experiencing crazy growth. We were one of the rare companies that grew during the pandemic, but I was exhausted and I was working a lot trying to keep the thing alive. But I wasn't able. You couldn't do this. We could do Zoom. We got great at Zoom, but even that was exhausting. I had also had a long part of my career had been in public speaking, so getting to travel, meet people, hang out, develop relationships, give speeches, all that kind of stuff. And I just couldn't do that. And you couldn't also do like, hey, you want to go meet for coffee later or grab a beer after work? You just couldn't do it for a while. And so that was what dawned on me was, man, the whole reason I've been successful and what I'm missing right now is this connection. And all of us want it. I now give a talk where I really look at the economic viability, the economic benefit of creating community for businesses to do that. And not in a way that's inauthentic, like, hey, we'll call it community. People are lonely. It's true, people are lonely. We can get into some stats if you want. But that's what we enjoyed about these businesses like you're talking about, whether it was a certain era, was we felt like we'd go somewhere, maybe we knew the person behind the cashier, we knew the guy who owned it or who was cooking there. It was a place we could belong, a place where our family could come and like do family stuff every week. So mine, you said Pizza Hut. Mine as a high school student was Mr. Gaddy's, as a pizza joint. Had some like arcade games, but we would go every Sunday after church. Our youth group would go. It was a bunch of guys. You get a buffet for like $6, and we'd go for and
it's a cheap buffet.
Cheap buffet. Again, it's the 90s. Teenage dudes would go and we developed these rituals. Any community does. And ours was called the crust pile. So we had these rules. Rule number one, like Fight Club. Rule number one, do this. Well, one of the rules is you can't eat the crust. All the crust go on one tray in the middle of the table, and you build this giant pyramid.
Oh, wow.
But it was just that idea. And then, of course, Mr. Gaddy's is gone. It's consumed by who knows whatever kind of conglomerate. Because the idea, the product they thought they were delivering was not community or a sense of place. The product they thought was, cheap pizza. So what's the cheapest sauce we can get? How do we cook it quickly with the fewest amount of employees, spend the least amount on advertising? Because yes, you're right. It just became this play. And so many businesses have done that, whether it's restaurants, hotels, stores, retail. They just think that in order to compete and stay alive, and it becomes a race to the bottom. The worst part about a race to the bottom is if you win, then you're on the bottom.
Sure.
And so a lot of these places have felt that. And we as a society, as humans, we really want a place to belong. And that's why the places that are doing that, Starbucks is not about coffee. It did not grow and explode when it did in the 2000s. Howard Schultz, the CEO who kind of started that, took that over and grew it, he started saying we're the third place. And as at a time where now you can argue that third places, we actually need them back again. But that was it. It's because it felt like this, it looked like this. Nobody loved it for the coffee.
We've gotten to befriend, I know, I'd say 90% of the Starbucks employees at the Starbucks we go to, they know me by name. Yeah, I know them by name. And it is interesting that because they're feeling this like push and pull. It's like the push and pull of corporate America, because they're asking because they want to recreate that third place. They want because they've that's why they're closing a bunch of stores. They're trying to really invest more into that, and they really are trying. So I'm gonna give them credit for that. But what they're also doing is that they still are. They're pushing the KPIs on the employees. So drinks have to get out within a certain number of minutes. They've got, I mean, they really, and I have noticed that they learn how to game the system. So you'll order them on the mobile app and they'll say, it's completed. The order's complete and it's not yet complete. Well, we'll set that aside. But one of the things that they'll do is they always want to, when a person comes in, they get greeted. Every single person. So anytime you go to Starbucks, watch. If they're following the guidelines of corporate, you're going to get a greeting. Yeah. Hey, welcome, good morning. Like I always say my name because I know hey Tyson, what's going on? Good morning. So they like that. The employees like that, but they're also getting the pull of. I also have to get this drink out because they want them to engage. It's not just saying hello. They actually want them to engage with the customers. But they're getting that. They're okay with that. But then it's also, but don't expect me to get this drink out in 2 minutes. No. Like I can't do both. So how do we balance those two things?
So I think, and you're right, Starbucks feels that tension. I think a couple things. One, they call their employees partners. Always have and probably always will. And that distinction is helps the employee feel like something different. A partner, like you're a co-investor in something. I'm a co-creator. I have ownership here. A lot of good benefits, a lot of things like that. So even if I just say that because if you're running a business listening to this, if you do want more from your employees, we all need and want more. Think about ways to bring them into that mission versus just saying, here's the KPIs. Compare that to another coffee shop or a restaurant that is only about the KPIs, where they don't do the things you just said.
Dunkin' Donuts.
And again, you could be like, well, that's a great investment.
I just made a lot of Dunkin' fans.
That's right.
Yeah, made them really mad.
On that one.
Yeah.
But do you want to go there every morning, to your point, if you have a choice? Now, the other piece, though, is the tension of us as the consumer. So your piece about who wants the drink out quickly. Well, corporate does because we do.
Yep.
And when I can just make a couple taps and order the same thing, I mean, again, my daughter, I have a teenage daughter. She's got the Starbucks app on her phone. Of course, it links to my card, so I see everything every time she's ordering it after school, et cetera. But that's the expectation. And there's now several Starbucks. You can't sit in them. They're not third places. They're just pickup places. Starbucks also fascinating. I'll misquote the stat, but if they were a bank based on deposits, they would be one of the, call it 10 largest because of all the preloaded dollars on our app or on our Starbucks cards, just cash sitting there on their balance sheet. Great business for them. So again, they're at scale now. Now again, but contrast that not to a Dunkin' or a Starbucks, but the locally owned single unit here in Nashville yesterday. One of the longest running coffee shops, 30 plus years, said, hey man, it's time to fold it up. And they could keep going. They're doing fine. Multiple locations, roasting business, wholesale, they're in grocery stores. But the owner, he's like, man, it's been a good run. And it's one of those people like, oh, here's Nashville, another one bites the dust. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think 30 years of running a profitable business that was a community staple, like, it's not on him to run it forever. So he dies if his kid, so we've got to recalibrate some success. But if you go to Fido and you have they put a countdown clock. Yeah, like the ones here. So, because it's 2 years in the making. And he did say, he goes, when locals close, they say, it's like last week, you better come. He's like, no, man, we're going to celebrate these last 2 years. So it's he's like, my lease is up, but he's got a clock, the number of hours. And so it's one of those things like, don't say you didn't get a chance to go to Fido before it closed. And go, they have the best thing there, if anybody's listening. The Bachelor Bomb is this hangover cure. It's a whole wheat bagel with a bunch of peanut butter on it. It's called the Bachelor Bomb. It's awesome. Anyway, but there's that.
I love a peanut butter bagel, so that's awesome.
But again, contrast that small unit versus the corporate that doesn't care about your name versus the corporate that does. And that just ends up in the choices we all make every single day based on where we're at. And when, again, back to my hotel experience, that was the other thing we said is like, there are people who stay in this hotel more nights than they, or a hotel with Marriott, more nights than they sleep in their own bed. So folks who are the highest status, some folks sleep in hotel beds 300 nights a year. And they want the same bed, same sheets, the same remote control, the same chicken breast, the same fill in the blank. and they want that consistency, but also still with some service,
Sure,
with some kindness, with some community.
I wonder if there was any lessons you picked up about, and maybe it's just the phraseology, certain things that you said, certain things that you picked up using their first name, all of that. Are there any little tricks that you think people can use when it comes to their practices, when it comes to communicating with their clients, or at least conveying the service in a better manner?
Mm-hmm. I think it is. I think there's a couple things. One is, and I see this a lot in the services business. I mean, part of it was because I was an entrepreneur. I have an attorney, I have an accountant, I have a wealth planner. I had these people, not because I talked to them every day, and hopefully I needed them sparingly, especially on the attorney side, just for setup, hopefully. Set up an acquisition.
That's exactly right, yeah.
I got this letter. But again, like there was such relief in knowing that for a long time I could call Rob. If I need something, got a question, whether it's like, here's a sticky employment thing that happened, help me talk through this. And just knowing, having that person there. And it was because they would take time to get to know the business. They would patronize the business. And as he was growing his book of business, that's who he wanted to know. His ultimate goal, he wanted to get into estate planning. He wanted to get out of business law, transaction law. He wanted to get into estate planning, estate law. Great. And so some of that, he just knew he needed to get to know these people. But he went in through business owners as they grew their wealth, so something that he could help them plan as they headed toward retirement and into life planning. And so if it's something about them, we all have this if we're like at a big room networking meeting. Okay, Tyson, I can remember it's Tyson's name. I'm about to shake hands with 15 people. So people do the trick, like, hey, Tyson, good to meet you, Tyson. How's your day, Tyson? And it's like, what I'm doing. At that
Absolutely,
point.
yeah.
Whereas like...
Also drives me nuts. It's one of those ones that's like, okay. Or the worst, not to shift us too far off the topic, but whenever they're using it to manipulate me a little bit, they're like, as a salesperson, well, Tyson, they're like,
right.
Listen, you didn't need to say my name right there.
That's
like
right.
you're using it gratuitously at this point. Yes.
Versus something that I can remember better than your name, or a way to help me remember your name is something that I also kind of gravitate to. So I heard earlier, you guys are from near like outside Columbia, Missouri.
Yep.
And so like earlier when we were talking with the crew that was here before you came in, I'm thinking like, okay, Columbia, I've never been to Columbia, Missouri, but I was kind of outside St. Louis. St. Louis just got a nonstop flight to London. I know that because I'm an aviation guy, so I read that in the headlines. And St. Louis is a pure city. So like there's these things that I can be like, man, Columbia. So like we can sort of relate on something. Now I'm forever going to know Tyson's from Columbia. So whatever that is for you in your practice, getting to know folks. I ran a gifting company for 11 years before I sold it and eventually got a chance to do what I do now. But when we would help people think through corporate gifting strategy, so law firms were our biggest client. And so they would send gifts to clients to retain at the end of the year. They would definitely send to prospects. They would send for interns they wanted to hire. There were lots of reasons law firms would get gifts. We said, look, you can send the box of chocolates. You can send the frozen steaks. But what is it that's unique about your firm? And so we'd walk them through that. And then, again, our longest running client was the largest law firm in town. And then we got to a point where they said, man, if you really want to impress this executive, what do you know about their spouse? Or what do you know about their kids? Or what do you know about their hobby? Because again, you could send them some nice coffee. We can send them some unique, we specialize in kind of artisan made goods. So It's not the same stuff from every city. We worked with multi-city firms to send a coffee from each city, for example. But we started to say like, what if you spent this allocation instead of the executive who has everything? The guy running a multi-million-dollar company, healthcare executive, he doesn't need another set of leather coasters. He does not need, another rocks glass or even a nice bottle of whiskey. Do you know what his wife likes to do? Where's his kid go to college? Where did he go to college? So again, there's those elements that you can, if you're willing to do a little bit of research or make that blatant and memorable when you have that next sort of discovery call or meeting, just to say, yeah, man, he mentioned he just went to a golf trip to Scotland. He loved it because his family's from there. You file that away somewhere. And you want to remember it, but put that in your CRM, store that, and then randomly or whatever you send something, or you just bring that up. Hey, last year when we met, you had just come back from that Scotland golf trip. Did you go back? Or, oh, no, this year we went out to, Bannon Dunes. We played Oregon for a little bit. So whatever those things are, it's a little bit of effort, but it's that special touch versus, hey, I saw the quarterly returns were great.
So you mentioned aviation, so
Yeah.
I'm going to take this opportunity to actually plug something that is related to gifts.
Yeah.
One of the best gifts I've ever gotten. So a guy named Matt Burke, he's sponsoring MaxLawCon, Zillametrics. I'm gonna plug them too.
Good.
But he's so I'm a private pilot. I like to fly Cessnas. We own a Piper, but I like to fly a Cessna just because I like taking people up in the Cessna so they can see under the wings, all that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
He sends me last week. I get this box. I'm like, what is this? And it's says fragile, and I open it up. It is a Cessna with our firm's logo on the side of it, and I'm like, and it sits on this little stand, and it's got so we have a trademark, strike fast, strike often, and so it's awesome, just the coolest gift, right? It's got that on it, just amazing, and so like. There is some people are just really good at gifting. Some people, and about your other point though, actually paying attention to people, listening to people. I used to do this game where I'd go get my hair cut, and I love doing this with people, right? Where I had in my notes app, every time I would try to pick up new information on the guy that was cutting my hair, right? Nice. So I'd go, he'd cut my hair, and he'd tell me all these things, right? And I would immediately go and sit in my car, make notes of it, right? And then I'd come back. I would make sure that I hit all the things that he mentioned, every single thing.
Yeah.
He would tell me, I would get more information, write it down. And so he would start saying like, your memory is incredible.
Nobody's is.
Just no one is.
No,
Yeah.
There's a trick for everything.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, like it's two things. One, we all want to be noticed, recognized, to your point about whether it's the name in the coffee shop or just saying like, hey, Barbara, last time you mentioned this. Because we deep down, that's how we're wired. That's who we are. We just want to be noticed and known by somebody. And therefore, because in so many places that seek to anonymize that, or where you are a number or a transaction, it's hilarious how easy it is to stand out by doing that simple thing, which businesses used to do all the time. Because you weren't customer number 1471, you were Tyson. And yep, Tyson's coming in. He always likes to eat the whatever. Because there was no CRM, there was no record, now we can have digital tools that help us, especially as we're growing our business and we have hundreds or thousands of clients and touch points. We can rely on that technology, but that's it, man. And that's what I tell my kids is to stand out nowadays. It's not necessarily to get noticed digitally by thousands, but I think it's to get known and remembered by the right folks, to ask the right question. In order to do that, where you just help people feel like they matter.
So you said the phrase, and I couldn't remember the full phrase, about deeper in the community. Yep. What was it again? Yeah,
the height of my success is related to the depth of my community.
I love that phrase. I'd never heard that. So height of my success is related to the depth of my community? Okay. So how do we go deeper in the community? What are some ways of doing that?
Great question. So there's a couple ways that we do it. So I'll kind of break this down in a couple ways. Number one, what is community? Because we can call a lot of things community. We like to use that word. It feels good. But community is only true when three requirements are met. The first is safety. So we have to feel safe in a place, and that could feel safe in a place of work, place of worship, whatever that is, physically safe, psychologically safe, mentally safe, emotionally safe, all that kind of stuff. We want to feel safe. And the reason is because our brains have always been wired. That's a whole reason we formed tribes and groups early on. Then growth. We want to be at a place where we want to grow. And so this is why we go to school in community, while we teach each other things, because we get smarter when we're together. And the third is meaning. We're the only species that thinks on a higher plane. So we form communities to seek meaning, whether that's religious, philosophy, whatever that is. So if those three things are true, then we've got community. Now, the ways that we do that, and again, research backs up, three simple things we can do to build real community. Number one is to eat together. And so, again, there's an endorphin release when we're eating. When we're eating, we're at the same height. We put down our weapons. Again, thinking back to our early brains, early ancestors, we put down our weapons. We picked up a spoon. And so that's just part of how we're wired physiologically. Research also backs that up. I've done a lot of research on this, but there's a book called Eating Together where a woman does research. She looks at potluck culture, so covered dish culture.
Oh, interesting.
And it's fascinating. It's kind of boring. It was her dissertation, but it's just fascinating about how she studied all these cultures, and there was just kind of, because especially at a potluck where the CEO is bringing a dish just like the janitor, whatever you want to do. And so it's just a unique kind of culture that we've developed and just around food. And so you want to build teamwork, you want to build camaraderie, just eat together. Doesn't mean you have to pay for it all as the boss, but it just means you can go out, you can do an outing, you can bring your lunch, I'll bring my lunch, let's just sit together and eat. The second is sweating together. So again, releases endorphin. And so if we move together, it doesn't have to be a CrossFit workout, hop on a bike, run 100 miles. But if we just exert ourselves. So if we were to go on a walk right now and talk, we would feel more bonded than if we're emailing each other or doing a Zoom call. So the more we can move together, we don't have to be moving in the same place at the same time. So if you're on your headset doing a lap and I'm on mine and we're in different countries, just the same.
So you can do this virtually. You can
still do it virtually.
Because that was going to be one of my questions.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right.
And so it can also happen with teams. Teams feel bonded if you guys have a physical challenge together. So it could be a step goal, or it could be like, hey, we're all going to do 1,000 push-ups amongst us by the end of the week. Because even if I'm doing mine and you're doing yours at a different time zone or a different time of day, collectively, I'm thinking about Tyson. Yep, great. So a release of endorphins. If you ever know people who have done CrossFit, of course you do because they talk about it, but
yes.
it's because it's built that community around.
That's right, yeah.
Peloton, it grew in that we think it's because they ship bikes to homes. That's part of it, but they have a whole community around that they've built that has led to their success. The last piece is in service. And so if we serve together, do something charitable together, again, doesn't have to be at the same time in the same place, but teams who serve together bond as well. And so again, it's that active service. I see you at your kindest if you're reading to a kid or doing a food drive or building a habitat house. So if we've got a team, if we've got a group of people that feels safe, wants to grow and finds meaning together, the next thing we want to do is set up some kind of routine or ritual around eating together, serving together, or sweating together. We'll keep building those bonds in that way. I think it's trust falls. We think it's filling out the survey. Tell us your most embarrassing moment. Those things, they don't hurt, but if you really want to cut down and jump into it, do those 3 things with your team. Do them with your customers. Do them with your family. There's a reason, and we probably remember it as kids, and if you're a parent, you do this too. You sit around the dinner table, we're eating, and so how was school? Fine. We know that. And so if we can find rituals of story together, then we'll build those connections, getting people to talk about that.
I love that. That part of the video is just we can just clip that, and like that's
right.
that's awesome. I think that's a great game plan. It's something we do. Like one of the things we try to do is like make sure we like build traditions as a family. Like so when we're sitting around the dinner table, what's the funnest thing we did today? Like so we just kind of go around.
Opening a question like that are great. I mean, like why you could have done everything that you're doing these next couple of days. You're in Nashville. That's awesome. Love having you here. Could have been an email. Could have been a call. But no, there's something valuable about doing it in person. And there's in the addition of physical presence and all the things, seeing each other, getting that reaction. But there's something else you can add on top of that. And so for remote teams that are spread out, multiple offices, or the value of remote work, love that. Maybe you come together once a year for a retreat. Just at the retreat, make sure you're eating together. You do something to sweat and you do something to serve as part of that retreat. And you'll bond more than just, hey, we got a fun trip to Nashville or Cabo or wherever the corporate meeting was.
So does it matter how often those things are done?
It doesn't. You need to do with some regularity so it creates routine. And so that's the hallmark of communities, that we have rituals and routines. And so as well as rules. So who's in, who's out, but don't do this or else you are out, because that hurts the community. But yeah, those rituals and routines allow us just a repetition, another R word, so we know what it means to belong here. So yeah, it again, it can be based on budget. That's why I tell people you don't have to buy dinner for everybody every night of the week, or maybe it's once a quarter you splurge, or once a week. An example I'll give is even before I was a leader, because a lot of times I talk to either up and coming leaders or folks who aren't C-suite just about what can they do. Because young people, especially, the younger you go generationally, the more lonely they index. And we think, but they're on their phone, they're connected, they're talking to their friends all the time. They are chronically lonely. And so I tell folks, especially young people in their companies, what can they do? One thing we did is one of my first jobs, we got together, we were talking about cool restaurants we liked in Nashville. Again, back to local restaurants. We're like, do we want to do like a lunch club? Just like on Mondays, cool. Mondays at noon, everybody can take a lunch break. All right, Anderson, where should we go next week? And we'll just go. And everybody pays for themselves. And if you didn't want to go or you couldn't go one week, that's fine. But it was just so everybody knew what to expect. So, hey, we're just going to go eat together just to build this community. And, hey, this is what, Sarah likes. It's in her neighborhood. Cool. I never heard of it. She's going to take us to a new cool restaurant. Awesome. We did that. I had when we ran my gift company, we had worked in a warehouse, very diverse workforce. And so we would do where folks could kind of bring in food from their home that they cooked from wherever they were from. And it was a cool way to experience that. And they felt, again, that was their active service. Hey, I'm going to cook food for the team. We especially did it in December because we worked crazy hours around the clock to get stuff out. And so we would buy dinner, have dinner brought in. Every night we stayed late in December. That was part of the deal. We'll pay for food if you'll stay to work. So yeah, that's fine. We're making a ton of money in December anyway, so we can splurge for food. We didn't do it any other time of year, and that's okay. So whatever those routines are for that cadence, and we got more out of our people because they felt connected to each other. So they'd step in. All right, somebody's slipping on the line. They're getting tired. I'm going to go jump in and help them out.
What do you think? I want to ask you about the gifting company in a second, but what do you think Peloton did to screw up? Like, because their stock plummeted. Like they're in the toilet right now. So like, how do you think that they screwed things up?
I think probably a couple of things in retrospect. And one is like, take the volatility of the stock market out of it. I think there was a lot happening obviously in 2000 and 2001 in terms of these pandemic companies. I mean, we bought a Peloton.
20 and 21.
20 and 21.
Yeah.
I mean, we bought a Peloton, and I'd never ridden a bike, but did it. And I was like, this is cool. I can do it at my house. Great. It's affordable. Made sense. We weren't going to the gym. Weren't doing anything else. Oh, wait, there's these leaderboards. Oh, wait, I can be friends and see their workouts. And oh, wait, I'm trying to get to 100 rides and 1,000 rides and all these things. So again, they got that really right. They expanded it beyond the bike. So you could argue they had a rower, they had a treadmill. I'm sure there's sort of a reason that might have made sense. So I go back and forth between should they have focused, stayed in the lane. Chick-fil-A just does chicken. So like, do you just keep doing the bike? So that's the name, Peloton, literally a group of riders. And not seek to grow so fast. I think in that era, you had a couple companies. There was another one, I think it was called Drizzly, that did alcohol delivery. And so based on where you work, because alcohol is regulated sometimes even at the county or city level, but they figured a way where you could order beer or wine or whatever and have it delivered to you based on all this. They eventually sold, but they had to sell or else they were probably going to go out of business based on where they were. And so that was a function of people were at home, alcohol consumption went up. And so that was a business that started and kind of was a product of its time. The other piece, of course, nowadays is people are back in gyms doing just fine. And so how do you differentiate in that world?
Yeah.
So I think it's probably a combination of those things of cheap capital at the time, IPOing when you could. And then, man, hardware is really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Gift company. I mean, again, we were essentially a hardware product because we were physically sending molecules, so to speak. And so anything with the hardware, like whether it's a cell phone or a bike, is also just another layer of difficulty. And they got so popular, the wait list, a lot of people were fine to wait. But some people were like, I want to do a bike 6 weeks ago, but not now.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so let's start with the gifting because we used to use a company called Send Out Cards.
Yeah, okay.
And like we would automate gifts and things like that. And it was great. And I just learned the other day that they closed down. I didn't, because I was like, I wonder what happened to that company. And like, I don't know what happened. Yeah. But I wonder why'd you get into it and why'd you get out of it?
So I got into it, again, not thinking it was going to become the biggest company I started of the ones I did. At the time, this is 2012. So a couple things sort of happened that all came together. One, I was traveling and speaking at the time. I was kind of doing that mostly full-time, was running a branding marketing company also. So I got a chance to go to cool cities. And that's why when somebody says they're from somewhere, maybe I've been there. But when I went, if I brought something back for the family, I didn't want to bring back a stupid keychain. I was like, I'm going to go to the local bookstore, get a book for the kids, or maybe bring back some local coffee or a chocolate bar for the wife or something like that. So that's what I would do. And I would think about that in Nashville because I knew local coffee place and stuff I liked. 2012, friends of mine in Denver talked about Nashville. So cool. We love coming there. I was like, I'm going to send you some of my favorite stuff. Hop online, I search Nashville gift, local gift. Two things popped up. One was Jack Daniel's barbecue sauce. Love all those words, but just not something I used. And a shot glass shaped like a boot with the skyline and the word Nashville on it. I was like, no, it's not what I want, man. I want this coffee. I want these marshmallows. I want this chocolate bar. I want this. So I spent half a day running around town. I stood in line at the post office, mailed it. I was like, God, why is nobody doing like a cool, nice Nashville gift set?
Yeah.
I know it's made here. So I talked to two buddies who I had started companies with. I was like, man, do you think, should we open a store? And they were like, no, we've never worked in a store, much less run one. Why would we do that?
What the hell do you think?
Hire people, inventory. That's dumb.
Especially the inventory part of it. Exactly. That's the tough part.
And I was like, well, but don't we like this stuff? Yeah. So the idea instead was a subscription box. This is when Dollar Shave Club, Bark Box, Birch Box, all this was popular. So we said, what if we had a Nashville subscription box where you could get sight unseen 4 locally made things? Maybe it's popcorn, jam, candles. And we'll get people like us, locals who love the city, just as like, here's a way to discover stuff. So if you didn't make it out to the farmer's market or this fair or this boutique, you can see what's here. Cool stuff's here. I said, all right, let's do it. So built the website early 2013, and we thought this would be a side hustle. We'll get maybe 200 subscribers like ourselves, but that's fine. Side hustle will be great. We'll get together once a month. We'll go find some stuff. We'll pack it, ship it, neat. And so we launched in the summer of 2013. That first month, we got 200 subscribers. So we're like, okay, had a schedule.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right. It went out and people got it. And a couple things. One, they shared it. They were like, this is so cool. What a cool service. And people shared it online. Media covered it. A very popular local kind of lifestyle blog covered it. I woke up the next morning after they covered it. I had 600 new orders. And I was like, oh, man, that's more than 200. Hey guys, where do we get 600 boxes? Where are we going to pack 600 boxes?
Yeah, no kidding.
How do we get 600 boxes to the post office? And what we also noticed was, I think it's cool, to your point, I think it's cool when you can personalize a gift message and not this printed out on some slip of paper you lose. I was like, we should handwrite gift notes. Because again, these are mostly going to be locals wanting to find local stuff. We're not going to handwrite that many. 80% of our orders from the day we started till the day we sold it were gifts. Wow. So we realized this is not locals buying it. It's people sending them to kids at college, sending them like, hey, miss you. Thank you for this. Deepest sympathies. They just wanted to send a taste of their hometown. And 3 months in is when we got our first corporate order that said, hey, we normally get an intern at Christmas. We clear the conference room for 3 days. We make him go around town with the company card and buy this stuff and pack it, and we go deliver it. You're telling me you guys can just do that? If we just send you a spreadsheet of address, you're like, yeah, we'll do it. And we made as much on a corporate gift as we did a 3-month subscription with fewer cost of goods, fewer shipping. We said, let's do more of that. We eventually opened a retail store, and then eventually we started doing that in other cities. And then eventually we grew, especially during the pandemic, where it became more than just the geography. And so it allowed us to truly go nationwide. We were looking for an investor and ended up finding an acquirer in the process. And so that's how was kind of the very condensed version of that.
I'm very curious if the company that acquired you all is the same one that sends them out of Cleveland. It's either Cleveland or Cincinnati.
This was not. So this was a private equity play. Okay. They were trying to do a roll up with some other brands. Was not well managed post acquisition, unfortunately. And so there was some upside. There was a good kind of 6-month run when I was still there running it, but eventually sort of was under resourced. A couple challenges it faced given where the economy was kind of 2022, Silicon Valley Bank, some of those things were happening. Corporate budgets pulled back for about 6 to 9 months. So ultimately, no. But part of that, to your point, is there has been some roll up. I knew you used to know that space very well. And there were lots of people. I would get calls from saying, oh, I see what you do in Nashville. I want to do this in Pensacola or Cleveland or fill in the blank because we love our city too. That's what I thought we were going to do prior to the pandemic. We were working on a business model to actually go franchise it, where you find somebody, whether it's Columbia, Missouri or St. Louis, Missouri, who loves their city, knows what's there, but knows that there's people who want to send and a taste of that city or represent that city well. And know everybody and know who those corporate buyers are, realtors, attorneys, CPA, PR firms, client-based businesses that need that touch point, that this is a great option that you could fully customize, make authentically yours. And again, whether it's including a note or put your logo on a mug, let's do that with the local coffee. We eventually got into helping our small business vendors offer that custom-made thing because corporates want their logo on stuff. I get it. But let's not put it on something that nobody wants to display. So if you put it on a locally roasted bag of coffee or a chocolate bar or something like that, then that stands out. People keep that around, or at least they remember it as they consume it, versus like, here's another Yeti. I mean, it's good. It's a Yeti. It works. But
I need another Yeti. Like I need a hole in the head. You know what I mean? But so right. It's the reason why I asked about Cleveland is Hunter Cavell. I think it's Cleveland, not Cincinnati, but he sent me for the last 2 years. He sent me this box from Cleveland, and it was a bunch of it was chocolate. It was like a popcorn. It was like a seasoning. There's a barbecue sauce. The funny thing about the barbecue sauce was it was this barbecue sauce. It didn't taste like regular barbecue sauce. It was a little different. Okay. So I used it for like other things, and I used it like really quick, and I ran out of it. And I'm like, where did that barbecue sauce come from? I could not remember where it came from. And last Christmas, I get a box, and there it is. And thank goodness. And it's funny. And I was also kind of wondering, And not that I was expecting. I was like, oh man, I wish Hunter had sent me another one of those boxes. That was really cool. I liked it.
Yeah.
And it didn't come, and I didn't get to like 2 or 3 weeks later. Yeah. And someone had stuck it under a desk.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, what is that box? And opened it up. I was like, oh, that's freaking awesome. Right. And it was so, luckily, that's like great. Nothing in there went bad. But it's such a cool thing. One thing we talked about doing was for the firm, like we have people all over the country. And we thought it'd be really cool from each city where we have an employee. We have a basket that we send to each client. And I thought that would be but it's sourcing all of those things.
See, that's what we did.
It sucks.
We would say, great, tell me the cities.
Yes.
And have each person tell me what they like. And then we would do the logistics on that.
See, that would be so awesome because I mean, like off the top of my head, I'm not gonna be able to name them all. Like Eau Claire, Wisconsin. You know,
right. You get real small.
Absolutely,
real small if you want, because something is made there. That was a cool thing to discover. And now what I do, and even seeing it around the country, I mean, like somebody is roasting coffee, making candles, probably making popcorn in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Like in all these cities, because the barrier to entry for a lot of these businesses is lower. You don't have to open a factory to do these things.
No.
A lot of these things can be great home-based businesses, and you can work on the quality of it. A lot of these folks where the partner, the spouse may be doing something, working somewhere, and they moved because of that, and they can't find work or don't want to find work. I mean, we had so many vendors who were stay-at-home moms, but wanted to do something during the day. Their kids were in school, so they wanted to do something from 9 to 2. And they would tell us, they were like the best, still to this day, the best pancake mix I've ever had was a woman here. And she was like, I drop the kids off at 9, I'll mill and bag pancake mix until 2, and then I'm done. So if you need something after 2, I'm with my kids, sorry. And we were like, cool, we can work with that. Like now that we know that. So if I need 500 bags, because I get a big order, she's like, you need to give me a month. I was like, okay, cool. But that was how she wanted to run her family and run her business. And eventually the kids got older and she just didn't want to milk pancake mix. She's got a different job now. So we see those things happen all the time, but to know what that capacity is, we had other folks who were like, no, dude, I'm taking this thing to the moon. I'm going to sell it to Kraft Foods. I'm going to get a couple $1,000,000. You see me at the beach. You're like, okay, cool. That's the American dream, whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about the Entrepreneur Center because I think it's a really cool thing. So you run the Entrepreneur Center. And I guess I wonder what made me think, really my first question was like, okay, like I wonder if there are like certain bedrock principles that you all focus on that every business needs to start with. And so talk about that a little bit.
So there's probably a couple things within that. So the Entrepreneur Center has been around 15 years. We exist to help anybody in Nashville who wants to start and grow a business. And so you could be doing a law firm, you could be starting a software company, you could sell on Etsy, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to take it, that's your dream. We've got folks who want to raise a bunch of money, IPO, great. We have other people who are like, I'm just trying to create a great business, hand it off to my kids, cool. So whatever those industries are, we have something for you. A lot of that, and this is where it gets into the principles. Again, go back to those connections, that community piece. The number one thing that will grow your business other than sales is a mentor. So we have an army of 150 volunteer mentors who are ready to help any of our member entrepreneurs. And it could be a quick thing. Hey, never hired anybody. I'm about to have an interview tomorrow. What should I ask? Maybe should I ask the right thing and pick the right person? It could be strategic. Hey, my landlord said I can expand in the unit next door. Got a great deal. Am I ready? Can you help me look at the numbers, figure out if this makes sense? Whatever those are, dial them up. Sometimes it's just, hey, I've never done this before. You're a 8-time entrepreneur, man. Can I just chat? So whatever those are, we want to connect you to the mentor, number one. Number two, then, it is some of those principles. So we kind of look at a couple different areas. Number one is what we call product market fit. So does your product fit the market? So back to me and my gift company, we thought the product for the market was a subscription box for locals. Nope, it was a city-based corporate gift for the corporate buyer. And so we didn't know that until we got to market and we were able to pivot. If we had stayed in the subscription space, we wouldn't have had the success we did. And so we encourage those founders to figure out what is that product market fit. The number one way, ask people. And so we have part of our accelerator programming during that week, we talk about that. And then I issue a challenge. Hey, next week when you come back, I'm going to ask you how many customer discovery conversations you had. And it's usually, here's what I'm working on. Does this sound interesting? Does this meet a need? What would you pay for it? And so it's covering those things because you could think, hey, here's the service I'm offering. I'm going to charge $50 for it and it does this. And everybody says, I don't want that or I wouldn't pay $50. You're going to save some time. I remember one woman once.
So you're not even talking like formal surveys. You're talking about.
This is just, and you can do that before you incorporate, before you name the thing, asking people what is your biggest pain point and what would you pay to have that go away? Sounds like the mafia. But what would that, and again, it could be something as simple as, I got these ants outside my window. I'll pay $100. Like, or it could be like, no, man, when I have to schedule my employees, it takes me 6 hours. And man, if my time is worth $100 an hour, I would pay somebody $600 a month for a scheduling software that worked. Great, let's go. Let's sit down and talk about what doesn't work about your current and why it takes 6 hours. So that's lets you in to know, because you can have a great idea and you could love it, but if people aren't going to pay for it, it is not a business, man. It's a hobby.
Is part of that process getting them used to going out and talking to people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's when, again, these aren't necessarily like, maybe I should make a list of kind of these 10 commandments or something, but things I find myself saying over and over again. To your question, yes. As a founder, even if you're not going to be the front guy forever, as a founder, you are the lead salesperson. And if you think sales are slimy and you don't like sales, again, I got okay with sales when I realized, like, I have something that's going to help them. And that's all I'm telling them about. And if they don't need it or want it, cool. That's great to know. I'll go on to somebody who does. And so when you see yourself as like, no, they have a pain, like, this is painful. This scheduling for them is painful. I have something I'm going to help them. So of course I'm trying to ease their pain. So when you look at it like that, then it doesn't feel, we always get to like the used car salesman, the slimy guy. Well, yeah, because he's trying to sell somebody something they don't want or need. And so if you don't want to do that, you shouldn't do that, period, ethically, then don't do that. So yeah, you're the front person. As you grow, you can't do all the sales and you can bring on somebody to do those things. But yeah, for a very long time, you were going to be the lead sales dog. Product market fit. And then it's the go-to-market strategy. So, hey, I know who I'm selling to. I'm selling to, stay-at-home moms who this. Great. Well, where are they? Where do they hang out? What media they're consuming? What apps are they on? Where they go in the community? Because again, we're like, we'll put up a billboard on this interstate. Well, if that's not the interstate stay-at-home moms are driving on, then everybody who's not interested in your product is going to see it. So being really smart about that. The number one thing, I said this earlier today, your job as an entrepreneur is just to not run out of money. Just don't run out of money for as long as you can. And you can not run out of money because you're making sales. That's the best. Because you get to keep all that money. You can not run out of money because you borrow some. That's fine. You get to pay it back and pay back a little bit more. But that can help you not run out of money. Or you can raise it. And so again, that's also good because you maybe don't have to pay back as much until you have some kind of event, an exit, and maybe. But there's different ways to do that. And then your job when you have the money through sales, borrowing, or raising it is to make it last as long as possible. And that's all entrepreneurship is. And so you as the leader, as the founder, as the entrepreneur, those are those things to keep in mind. Knowing who your market is, knowing how to reach them, and then managing those dollars when you get them. That'll lead to the success. Helping with all that is that mentor.
Yeah, the thing in undergrad at Mizzou, my undergrad's in marketing, business marketing, and they're I always say, number one rule of business is break even. You want to break even, hit break even is what you want. Like that's where you want to get to. It's not like, you want to make billions of dollars.
Sure.
Like you want to break even. That's like number one. Now, you mentioned the sales part, so I want to go back to that a little bit. And so Alex Hermosi, I don't know if you follow him much, but he talks about he's this 100 millionaire or whatever, and talks about a lot of different things. But one of the things he mentioned was you should be in charge of sales for as long as possible because like that's like the engine that drives everything else.
Yeah.
So whatever your sales are, whatever you could be selling widgets or legal services, doesn't matter. You need to be in charge of that for as long as possible because if you lose control of that and someone takes it, that's bad for your business. So that's a good bit of advice. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I wonder how much bad advice you see, business advice you see online or other places. And what are some of those things that people should stop listening to?
People ask me like, who does the EC, the Entrepreneur Center in Nashville, compete with? And it's really nobody locally. Like we actually could use more educational resources, especially those that are in person. We offer a lot of virtual stuff, and you might meet with a mentor virtually. But as the city's growing and as more people here are and become entrepreneurs, we had 40,000, I think, new business applications, LLC filings in the state in 2023. So it's the demand's there.
Yeah.
The help is needed. But it's the competition, like with anything else, is people's time. And when I can scroll and see some bit of advice from somebody, that's a temptation. So obviously, no such thing as get rich quick. No method by which that's true, or it will ever happen. Number two, I would say passive income is usually a myth. Oh, I'm going to just create this business and it'll give me passive income. Again, there are some models of income that you are not working equally hard for, that over time the input is less and the return is greater.
Like insurance or something like that. Yeah.
Investments can be that. Insurance can be that. Some asset ownership, whether it's nowadays maybe crypto. I know nothing, very little about that. Real estate, et cetera. So there are some things like that, but again, it's still over time. I think that you can do this alone. This idea of like, man, your family doesn't believe in you, your wife, you just do it anyway. Go about it on your. No. Again, nobody, all the single name people, Elon, Oprah, Beyonce, whatever, they've got an army behind them and always have, and some other kind of a benefit, whether they acknowledge or that or not. So I think by partnering with someone, in my 4 businesses, I always had a co-founder and I never regretted it. My equity share was less, but I could not have done it. Now, in finding a co-founder, I always partnered with somebody who had different skill set than me. We never duplicated skills on the founding team. As we grew, maybe we needed duplication to scale, but that was something that I think, don't be afraid or ashamed of that. Now, partnering with the right business person, it is as intense and legally binding in many cases, a partnership as a marriage. And so be very deliberate about that, about how things are divided up and what those agreements are. But don't shy away from it.
Well, how do you do that, I wonder? Because like-minded people tend to hang out with like-minded people, sure. Right? So how do you find the right fit for a partner?
Man, I tend to equal ambition but different skills is sort of what I find. And maybe that's somehow how I gravitate in my friend set. I've started businesses with people I've known. The one time I jumped on as a number 2, so I was kind of in between starting companies. Somebody I admired was starting something. He was like, "Why don't you come in as like the number 2, not as a co-founder, but help me do some of these other things." And I realized after about 3 months in, we both sort of realized like we've got pretty much all the same strengths, and that's cool. But this was your idea. You need to go run it. You need a true number 2, not a mirror, whatever you want to call it. He and I are still great friends. He's doing great things now. He grew and exited that company and is leading here, great organization in town, and we're still friends because we both realized like we're both strong at this. We both love this, but the things you're doing is like, I wanted to do that, or we should do that. So, but that frank, honest discussion. And if you're already friends and you can have that, then you can stay friends after that piece. But
well, how do you decide who should be the one and number 2? I wonder, because like that is something where, because I'm a firm believer there should be one decision maker. Yep. Like you both can't run the firm together. Right. How do you make that decision? Is there certain traits that would make the number 1, number 2, number 2? Can you give some guidance on that?
Yeah, the way we always did it was, what is the decision? So, for example, with my gift company, there's actually 3 of us co-founders. And so if there could always be a majority vote with 3. But if somebody wasn't available or somebody was like, I don't even know, was like, let's defer to the expert. So I would be the sales guy, finance, kind of the growth minded. And so if the decision was about that, again, they would ask great, smart, penetrating questions that could help us really unpack the decision. Somebody else was marketing the brand, the trajectory, the story. So if it was a question about that, like that's what he's good at. And if he's wrong, then we'll talk about it and we'll deal with it and figure out how we need to address it going forward. And then we had somebody else who was operational. And so how do we scale the actual physical and shipping piece of this? And so trust is at the heart of that. So just like a good marriage, just like any sort of good friendship or business partnership, it's, do we have that trust? Because if it's, I'm questioning every decision you're making, it's because then there's not trust. And do we really need to be in business together? Even if it's different skill sets, even if we have fun on the weekends, enjoying whatever hobby, if I don't trust you to run this business, then that's a critical issue. If you didn't trust your wife to parent your kids, then we've got bigger problems to talk about. It's not the decision of you let them stay up, or there's a lack of trust there. So it can be the same way in business. And it equally matters if you're seeking investment. Not all capital is the same. And so sometimes we like to think that because we watch Shark Tank and we're like, hey, they got $100,000 from one of them. That's great. But you can see that in Shark Tank that I don't watch it a lot. I do appreciate what it's done for kind of my industry, so to speak, and the popularity of it. But, Lori's money is not the same as Mark's money in terms of their background and their connections and their brand. And so based on what product you've got, the capital is not equal. And so it's the same in any investor, that friends and family, your uncle's money may not be as important or different than the banks or whatever that may be. So thinking all about that back to community, it's people. at the end of this thing, that we're dealing with people as part of this, whether they're employees, co-founders, customers, employees, all those elements. Is it's still the human side of this we got to keep in mind.
Let's talk about first hires. Do you have any guidance on so let's say you're starting out by yourself, okay? Because one of the first questions I always get from law firm owners is, okay, what should be the first hire?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times it's, should I hire a receptionist? Should I hire an assistant? Should I hire an office admin? Should I hire an attorney? Should I hire a paralegal? Do you have, and so we'll have to be a little more general when it comes to running a business, but I'm guessing the principles are going to apply the same.
My first hire was always a shortstop. So I play baseball. So the shortstop is the most versatile position on the field. They can usually play anything from second base to center field to pitcher. And so it was always somebody who had a lot of different talents, knowing that early on they were going to be doing a couple of different things. So at the gift company, our first person, she was doing sales. She was sourcing product. She was out networking. She was very organized. So she did a couple things that took a thing off of each of the co-founders' plates. And so she was only able to stay. We didn't need a shortstop forever, because eventually as we grow and specialize, okay, now somebody can just do sales. But then she gets a choice. Hey, if you want to stay a shortstop, you can go find another company who needs a shortstop. But are you ready now to move from that into just sales or just this other?
It's like you read my mind, because I said, I was going to ask you, you're basically hiring them though, knowing they're not going to be around forever.
Not in that position forever.
Yeah, well, definitely not in that position. Right. So you answered that question. My follow-up is going to be though, isn't that person really hard to find, and are you going to have to overpay for that person?
The height of my success is directly related to the depth of my community. So every time, especially in the gift company, that we needed a critical hire. So that first hire was somebody that had interned at my very first company, and we just stayed in touch and what they were looking for, and we kept chatting. We eventually did open a retail store. Ended up being $1 million part of our business. We needed somebody to run a retail store. We're just three dudes who, been to stores, but a friend of ours who had been a regional merchandiser for Gap. She was like, kind of ready to live corporate. I've always wanted to own my own boutique, but I don't have the money to open mine. We were like, what if you open one like for us? You had complete control. And she was like, sounds awesome. So beautiful store, beautiful element. We had to design that store. Her husband was an architect. He was like, I normally design boring medical buildings. Like, I'd love to get back to cool stuff and design a beautiful store. So it's building building your network before you need it. As a phrase, dig your well before you're thirsty. And so understanding, like, can you meet today? Hey, I'm thinking about starting a firm in a year. A year after that, I'll need a shortstop. Go meet some folks who in your space would like that. And it's so interesting now where maybe we're in a different labor market, TBD, but people are looking for meaning. Back to that safety, growth, and meaning, 3 elements of community. Meaning is hard to find, especially in the corporate space. I think you'd be surprised about how many people want to help a friend, want to help somebody start something new, want to try that out. Because if you are in a large corporate job, legal side or otherwise, you can probably go back to a large corporate job. By and large, you've proven that. Great name on your resume, been there a couple of years, several years. Like, based on where you're at financially, talk to your family, but you could probably try something out. So those people are out there. You don't have to go find some college kid that you're spending half your time teaching how to be a professional. You can find those folks. So if you start now, don't start when it was like, I needed a shortstop 3 weeks ago. The only exception to that I'll say, obviously if you're in a specialized field, if I'm running a hospital, I need a nurse.
Sure, yeah.
But what are you doing as the founder that you don't need to be doing, that a lot of people can do just as well or maybe better? So I was balancing the books every month because it's math, it's a spreadsheet. I got it. Man, if I can stop doing that, and there's 1 million people who can balance the books, enter the ledger, et cetera, I can spend 3 more hours a week on sales. And that will create more than enough money to go pay somebody to do the books. So you can start to carve out a few things like that until you bring on a full-time hire. And so either identify those with you and your founding team. Great, that's 40 hours amongst us. Here's the list that the shortstop's going to take care of. Or if it's just, nope, I'm only going to bring in somebody for 10 hours to do this. But you've got to be clear on how that allows you as the founder to create additional wealth, to pay for that person and then some. Otherwise, you're never going to scale. Maybe it allows you to sleep an extra hour and you really need that right now. That's fine too.
Sleep's important.
That's right. Because again, you can get that hour and create value from that. So that's where you just do that math. It can be quick, back of the napkin math, but show that there's value there to figuring that out. and that it's worth, you're going to create kind of that wealth or that extra revenue from farming that out and hiring that out.
My last question. Let's say that a law firm owner comes to you, says, I'm going to start a law firm in Nashville today, tomorrow, right? And give me your best advice. What are you going to tell them?
Show up. So Nashville is a town that will say yes to meetings. Say yes to the first meeting, and you earn the second one. So it's a nice enough town that, hey, I'm new to town, starting a law firm, trying to get to know business owners. Can I take you to coffee? You ask 100 people, you'll get 95 yeses. Now, if it's, hey, great meeting you, learning about your business. Can I send you a proposal for what I think I can help you with? You just told me your pain points. I think you need maybe some legal eyes on something. Can I send you? That's what you got to earn and kind of show up, show you're authentic, that you're not just here, screw Tyson. He didn't want my business. I'm never talking to him again. Show up at things. This city has enough stuff going on through our civic groups where you have opportunities to plug in a meaningful way. And it's funny, this town built on songwriters, very collaborative in nature. Every songwriter I've heard when I go to a songwriter night, they always say that Nashville is a 10-year town. You move to Nashville today as a songwriter, you're probably not going to have a number one hit until 2035. Because you got to know people, you got to write some songs, you got to play out, you got to get booed, you got to demo, you got to meet people. And they're kind of, sometimes you get a couple of years earlier, sometimes nobody shows up and in a week they've got a hit. And so I don't think on the business side it's a 10-year town. I think it's at least a 1 or 2 year town in terms of getting to a level where people know you, refer you, patronize you, those sorts of things. And I think if you're willing to put in that kind of work, the city will see that, know it's authentic. I don't know the exact stat, call it net, 100 people move here a day from all over. Some have jobs, some are starting companies. But that Nashville thrives on that, of welcoming the outsider. And so you have a chance to do that. If you move here to start it, or if you leave a big firm, you've been here for a while, you're ready to hang up your own shingle. The city embraces that with as many new businesses and even just nuances of specialties within the legal field that are ever emerging. There's entire parts of firms, but entire firms that are starting to really understand and leverage and think about AI, the crypto space, the creator economy, all these things that we would not have thought of if we had been chatting when you started your podcast, are now realities. And so mastering one of those, but getting to know folks and letting them know how you can help them, you could make it work here.
Even if it is a 1 or 2 year city, and let's say any city is 1 or 2 years, I think that if you think on the 10-year horizon or even longer, I think it's gonna be really helpful for you to know this you're not gonna be an overnight success. You might get lucky and maybe you will be, but you're not gonna be. So I think it's great guidance. I think it's great advice. So I appreciate doing that.
You bet.
Sam Davidson, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
This is a fun chat.